It's 9:52 a.m., October 3rd, 2025. At the Scarborough Shoal, deep inside the Philippine EEZ, the USS Higgins, DDG-76, suddenly picks up multiple radar tracks. The CIC floods with red icons fast, closing, irregular. Contacts, bearing 240, range 3,000 yards. Alarms echo through steel corridors. Sailors sprint to battle stations, boots slamming the deck. Outside, gray silhouettes slice through the haze, two Chinese Type 52D destroyers and their escorts, charging in tight formation. Over the radio, the Chinese voices blare warnings, ordering the American ship to turn away. The Higgins holds course. Her engines roar steady. On the bridge, every face tightens. In moments, one wrong move could ignite the South China Sea. Bridge cameras show white spray as Chinese cutters slash across the bow at 300 meters. Water cannons lifted. The helmsman's knuckles go white on the wheel. Maintain phone-op track, the captain says. Voice flat. The ship's horn thunders. Metal hums. One wrong shove of steel here could light a regional war. The Scarborough Shoal, a ring of coral and sand barely above water, sits at the center of a decade-long dispute. For the Philippines, it's sovereign ground. For China, it's a historic right. For the United States, it's a test of resolve. The USS Higgins, part of the 7th Fleet, sails here under a single mission: phone-op freedom of navigation operation. Its job is to prove no nation owns what international law calls free sea. Around the shoal, 40 Filipino fishing boats drift nervously. Some fly small blue and red flags. Others show scars from past encounters. Nearby, Chinese Coast Guard, Type 3901 vessels circle like wolves, blasting water cannons to drive them away. Higgins holds course 20 knots steady, sensors tracking every contact. One wrong maneuver could mean disaster not just for the ship, but for every fisherman nearby. Why risk it? Because sea lanes here carry fuel, food, and electronics that keep daily life running back home. If one power fences off a shoal, others will fence off straits. Prices rise, trade slows, and allies doubt Washington's word. A quiet retreat today becomes a louder crisis tomorrow. The destroyer's Aegis Baseline 9 with SPY-1DV radar builds a live picture from satellites and patrol aircraft tagged in Pacific Command logs as phone-op Scarborough Incident 2025. On deck, CIWS hums ready, SM-2 and ESSM rest in the Mach 41 launchers. Across the water, Type 52D and 54 amperes hulls flash gray in the Sunday. Everyone calls it routine. Nobody believes it. Manila cites its treaty with Washington. Beijing leans on historic rights. Fishermen watch the flags, not the law. Commanders measure every yard, knowing one shove or spark could ripple across the world. In moments like this, the sea turns into a mirror of national pride. If you were in command, would you hold the line with 1 or back off to avoid war with 9? Type your choice below. 9:58 a.m. The tension breaks. On the radar, new tracks bloom 2 Type 52D destroyers, 1 on each flank, spreading wide. Their fire control radars blink on, sweeping across the USS Higgins like flashlights in fog. The CIC lights up with alerts. Targeting beams active, multiple locks detected. Someone shouts. The captain glances at the display, then at the bridge windows. Outside, the Chinese ships cut closer, barely 1,500 yards now. A pair of Type 54 amperes frigates follows in line, their deck guns angled just high enough to look defensive. Higgins doesn't flinch. Hold course, maintain phone-op, the captain orders. His voice is calm, but his hand tightens on the console. The ship's Aegis system shifts to tracking mode. ESSM cells stand ready. Over secure radio, Pacific Command confirms, proceed. Eyes on you. Chinese Coast Guard ships now weave across the bow, spraying arcs of water. Some hit the hull, drenching sailors on the foredeck. A petty officer mutters, "They're trying to make us blink." The captain replies quietly, "We don't blink." The bridge shakes as Higgins' engines surge. The phalanx CIWS rotates, barrels spinning up just in case. Cameras record every move proof for Washington and warning for Beijing. Across the water, a Type 52D abruptly turns to port, cutting across Higgins' projected path. Distance, 800 yards, 600, 400. The helmsman's voice cracks. "Sir, collision course." "Hold line," the captain answers. "We move, we yield, we lose." Off the starboard beam, Filipino fishing boats cluster in the destroyer's lee, engines coughing as they ride the chop. A loud hailer barks, "Keep clear of our wake." From the Chinese side, bullhorns volley slogans. In the CIC, sailors call out range markers. The AN, divided by SPY 1DV radar, keeps painting targets, its pulse steady like a heartbeat. One Chinese destroyer lights off its YJ-18 launch tubes, covers open, no missiles yet. The message is clear. We can, anytime. Every camera, every satellite, every command center in the region watches this dance of steel. The air is so charged that even the ocean seems to hold its breath. At 10:06 a.m., the closest Chinese ship throttles back just enough to avoid contact. Higgins keeps steady, slicing through the spray, leaving a white scar across the South China Sea. 10:14 a.m., the standoff deepens. Higgins pushes forward, keeping her phone-op track steady while the Chinese formation closes in like tightening jaws. Water churns between hulls, radar beams crisscross the mist. Multiple locks, same vectors, a technician warns. The captain nods. "Let them paint us. We're not the ones flinching." The Type 52D destroyers adjust course, boxing Higgins between their shadows. On screen, fire control radars blink and sync one slip from escalation. "Recommend defensive posture," the XO whispers. "Negative," the captain says. "No weapons free unless fired upon." In the control room, tension cuts deeper than steel. Every sailor feels it, the weight of a message being written live. Outside, Chinese Coast Guard cutters cross Higgins' bow again, forcing micro-turns. The ship heels 5 degrees, balancing speed and defiance. Spray blinds the foredeck. Sailors tighten straps on deck guns, ready but restrained. A petty officer mutters, "Feels like they're daring us." "They are," the captain replies. "And we're daring back." 10:23 a.m. The air hums with static. Communication jams for a heartbeat, then clears. No one knows who started it. Radar picks up drone-sized blips circling high, unmanned eyes watching both fleets. The captain knows restraint now matters more than firepower. A Philippine fishing boat drifts too close, caught between giants. Chinese cutters blare sirens. Higgins slows to shield it. "Keep her behind our line," the bridge calls. For a moment, human instinct overrules strategy, one fisherman against fleets of war. Across the water, the Type 52D Jefe angles again, presenting broadside. Launch covers glint under the sun, still closed, but menacing. Every lens from Beijing to Washington focuses on that image. This is the new battlefield. Cameras instead of gunfire, pressure instead of explosions. The Pacific sky holds its breath. Each wave feels heavier. Every minute without a shot is a quiet victory. The captain stands motionless, eyes on the horizon, knowing one spark could turn this tense ballet into chaos. If you were standing where he is, would you hold your ground with 1 or pull back to prevent the spark with 9? Drop your answer below. 10:29 a.m. The ocean falls silent. Higgins slices through haze when a sailor shouts, "Unknown fast movers surface level." New radar returns bloom small, scattered, closing fast. Not destroyers, not fishing boats. Drones. They skim the waves, no larger than trucks, moving in tight swarms. Thermal feeds confirm unmanned, low-profile, likely Chinese sea-skimming drones launched from shore. The captain's eyes narrow. That's new. Seconds later, alarms wail. Multiple contacts bearing 220 through 280. The CIC bursts alive. "They're probing us," the no mutters, "or testing our nerve." Higgins adjusts tactics. The Phalanx CIWS spins up, while EW teams jam control links. Radar screens flicker with static. Some signals fading, a sailor reports. But more inbound. The captain stands still, torn between restraint and defense. Firing first, could start a war. Waiting could risk a hit. Every heartbeat stretches thin. The drones dart closer, skimming low across the bow, leaving white trails. Chinese cutters shadow their path, pretending not to notice. Range 500, 400. Voices rise. The destroyer's sensors track the swarm, small, fast, unpredictable. CIWS on standby, the gunnery chief calls. Hold fire, the captain answers. No hostiles declared. A metallic clang slams the hull. Something small bounces off the starboard rail and vanishes into the sea. No explosion, no damage. But the echo races through every deck like a ghost of what could have been. Above, a drone streaks past the bridge, its shadow sliding across the glass. Cameras catch it all. In moments, the world will too. Across the South China Sea, one American destroyer stands alone, surrounded by steel, by silence, and by choices no one wants to make. 10:37 a.m. The sea explodes in motion. The swarm shifts again. Half the drones break off, circling behind. "They're flanking us," the XO shouts. The captain doesn't move. "Deploy decoys. Keep CIWS tracking." The command center glows red under warning lights. The hum of tension builds into a roar. On deck, sailors brace behind bulkheads. The phalanx CIWS screams to life, barrels spinning. Tracers carve the air as bursts of 20mm fire light the horizon. Water erupts in white plumes. One drone vaporizes mid-turn. Another disintegrates into spray. The crew cheers, but the radar shows more. Always more. 10:39 a.m. A Chinese Type 54 Amperes frigate edges closer. Bow waves splitting wide. Over open radio, a Mandarin voice barks, "You are in violation of Chinese waters." The captain snaps back, calm but fierce. "We are operating in international waters." Both sides know this is a script no one wants to finish. Suddenly, a drone slams into the water 30 yards off the port side, sending a geyser high over the deck. The impact rattles the hull. Possible debris strike. "No breach," the damage control officer reports. The captain exhales. One more second, and this would have been war. The CIC is chaos shouting. Reports. The smell of ozone. Then silence. The last drones vanish from radar. The Chinese frigates hold position, guns aimed but idle. A standoff inside a heartbeat. Balanced between fear and pride. 10:43 a.m. The captain orders, "Secure from battle stations." No one moves at first. Hands tremble over controls, eyes fixed on the horizon. The ocean looks calm again, but everyone knows it's a lie. Each man aboard Higgins has just stared straight into the edge of history. Below decks, engineers nurse the turbines, keeping a surge in reserve. Topsides, the Seahawk stays chained, no launch in this chop. A short flash from PACOM. Hold restraint, document everything. The captain logs each near hit, jaw set. News cameras on both sides broadcast the same image, an American destroyer, defiant amid gray seas, surrounded but unbroken. Commentators call it restraint, others call it luck. For the crew, it's survival by inches. Moments like this draw the line between peace and catastrophe. If you stood on that bridge, would you hold your ground with one? Or pull back before the next spark with 9? Tell us below. 11:12 a.m. The sea finally calms. Waves lap gently against the hull, as if nothing had happened. But inside the USS Higgins, silence feels heavy. The smell of gunpowder still lingers. Spent shell casings lie near the CIWS mount, gleaming in the gray light. The crew moves slower, now steady, exhausted, but intact. Reports flood in from the region. Beijing claims the US provoked the encounter. Washington releases footage showing restraint. On social media, clips of the near collision go viral, frames of steel, spray, and inches between war and peace. Some call it a victory for freedom of navigation. Others, a dangerous gamble at sea. The captain stands on the bridge wing, eyes tracing the horizon where the Chinese ships once loomed. "We held," he says quietly. The Tenno nods. This time. Both know the next time could be closer, faster, deadlier. The South China Sea isn't cooling, it's just waiting for the next spark. In Manila, damaged fishing boats limp home, their flags torn but flying. For them, the American destroyer wasn't just a symbol, it was a shield. Across the Pacific, analysts debate deterrence, escalation, and cost. A single patrol has become a global headline. Markets twitch while diplomats draft statements that say everything and nothing at once. USS Higgins turns east, engine steady, heading back toward deeper waters. The logbook reads, "No casualties, no shots fired at the enemy. Mission complete." But every sailor aboard knows no shots fired doesn't mean no battle fought. In the quiet that follows, reflections come easy. For all the technology and power on display, what saved them wasn't weaponry, it was restraint. The kind that costs as much courage as combat itself. Moments like this remind the world how thin the line truly is between showing strength and starting a war. If you believe holding that line was the right call, press 1. If you think pulling back would have been wiser, press 9. Drop your number in the comments and hit subscribe to follow the fallout when this standoff returns to Scarborough. The night sky over the East China Sea glowed with the lights of afterburners. 50 Chinese warplanes surged toward the contested waters near the Senkaku Islands, a show of force designed to rattle nerves and test resolve. Below them, hidden among clusters of fishing boats, unusual activity stirred. From the decks of modified vessels and disguised platforms, small kamikaze sea drones hummed to life, their engines buzzing like swarms of angry wasps. On the horizon, the silhouette of a lone U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer cut across the dark waves. Its crew of 300 men and women knew this was no routine patrol. Radar screens pulsed with warnings, radios crackled with tension, and the order came down fast. Prepare for a saturation attack. Within minutes, the ship's layered defenses, missiles, jammers, and close-in cannons would face one of the most aggressive drone swarms ever launched in these waters. The countdown to chaos had begun. For months, tensions in the East China Sea had been simmering. The Senkaku Islands, tiny and uninhabited, carried immense symbolic weight for both China and Japan, with the United States bound by treaty to defend Tokyo's claims. Each maneuver in these contested waters risked triggering something larger, something no one wanted but everyone prepared for. China's strategy was clear. Overwhelm US and allied forces not with one decisive strike, but with waves of cheap, expendable systems. A swarm of drones costing a fraction of a single US missile could force commanders into impossible choices, spend millions to shoot them down, or risk letting one slip through. That night, the challenge escalated, with 50 warplanes overhead as both distraction and intimidation. The sea drones posed the true danger. They skimmed above the waves, radar signatures so faint they seemed like ghosts until it was nearly too late. The U.S. destroyer's sensors tracked dozens, then hundreds, as the swarm spread out to encircle its position. The crew braced. In seconds, the engagement would test whether America's layered defenses could withstand the future of naval warfare or collapse under sheer numbers. Would steel, training, and technology be enough against swarms designed to saturate every system at once? As both sides closed, one truth became unavoidable. This was no drill. The clash ahead would be remembered not just as another skirmish, but as a glimpse of tomorrow's wars. And before we dive into the battle, what do you think? If you believe the US Navy will hold the line, press 1" the comments. If you think China's swarm can break through, press 9. The first warning came as a sharp tone from the Combat Information Center. Multiple fast-moving contacts, bearing 085, closing range. The display lit up with blips scattered like a storm of insects. The commanding officer ordered immediate battle stations, and the crew shifted into rehearsed precision. The destroyer's Spy-1 radar tracked the swarm while the electronic warfare team activated jamming to disrupt drone guidance systems. Above, the ship's MH-60R Seahawk launched, skimming low across the waves, dropping sonar buoys to detect any underwater surprises while relaying targeting data back to the ship. At altitude, a 8 amperes Poseidon monitored the chaos from afar, feeding intelligence into the tactical picture. The first volley of evolved Sea Sparrow missiles shot upward, streaking into the night sky before diving down onto clusters of drones. Explosions rippled across the water's surface, metal fragments and fire lighting the dark sea. Yet for every wave destroyed, more pressed forward. The swarm was designed for this, forcing defenses to expend ammunition at an unsustainable rate. Close-in weapon systems opened fire. The phalanx CIWS spun to life, spitting streams of depleted uranium rounds at incoming drones. Its radar-guided bursts shredding targets within seconds of contact. The RIM 116 RAM missiles joined in, picking off fast movers that slipped through the outer layers. Still, gaps appeared. A handful of drones skimmed dangerously close to the hull before detonating harmlessly against the ship's wake. Inside the operations center, tension was rising. Displays showed ammunition counts ticking downward. Every missile fired represented hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to destroy a drone worth a fraction of that. The cost exchange was brutal and exactly what the Chinese planners had intended. The commander's voice cut through the noise. Keep the pressure steady. Prioritize cluster formations. Don't chase stragglers. It was a battle of endurance, of calculated discipline against sheer volume. The first minutes of combat had proven one thing. The U.S. layered defense worked, but the margin for error was razor thin. As the sea churned with debris and fire, the crew realized the engagement was only beginning. What lay ahead would push every system and every sailor to their limits. The battle dragged on minute by minute as the swarm pressed from every direction. The sea itself seemed alive with hostile intent, a churning mass of wakes where the drones cut across the waves. The destroyer's defenses worked relentlessly, but strain was setting in not for the machines, but for the crew. Every alert, every impact, every intercepted target was another jolt to nerves stretched thin. The MH-60R Seahawk circled back, pylons empty, its crew reporting dozens more drones advancing from disguised fishing vessels on the horizon. That revelation chilled the command center. The enemy was not running out. What looked like scattered fishing fleets were mobile launch platforms, hidden until the moment of release. A second wave slammed in from the west. ESSM interceptors streaked upward, detonating in fiery blossoms above the water. The failing CIWS screamed, barrels glowing red-hot as it cut down anything that slipped through. But fatigue was measurable now. Ammunition stores were dipping into the red. The crew could see the numbers each shot, each launch, dwindling their ability to keep pace. Below deck, sailors carried fresh missile canisters and ammo belts to reload stations, sweat pouring down despite the night air. The destroyer was holding, but barely. Shrapnel from intercepted drones rattled across the deck, damaging antennas and sensors. Though minor, each hit reminded them, one lucky breakthrough could change everything. From the bridge, the captain studied the tactical picture. "They're probing us, measuring every response," he muttered. This wasn't just an attack, it was data collection, a rehearsal for future wars. Each missile fired was a lesson to Chinese planners on how far defenses could be stretched. The ship remained intact, but pressure mounted with every passing second. As the swarm regrouped for another push, the sailors knew they faced not just drones, but a strategy designed to bleed them dry. And right here's where the clash feels most intense. What do you think? If you're backing the US crew to endure the storm, press 1" the comments. If you think China's swarm tactics will overwhelm them, press 9. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next phase of this showdown. Just when it seemed the destroyer had settled into a rhythm of intercept and reload, the swarm shifted tactics. Instead of rushing headlong in tight waves, dozens of drones suddenly dove beneath the surface, their small electric motors churning quietly below the chop. The radar picture thinned, but sonar operators called out in alarm new contacts rising from beneath the waves. These were not standard kamikaze boats. Modified variants carried warheads designed to explode underwater, using shock waves to cripple hulls and propellers. It was the kind of threat the ship's defenses were not fully optimized against. Surface-to-air missiles were useless here, and even the phalanx struggled to lock onto targets half submerged. The MH-60R dropped additional sonar buoys, desperately mapping the undersea chaos. Pate Ampère's operators relayed the data. The drones had adapted, exploiting the blind spots between surface radar and sonar coverage. Every sailor on board realized the implications. China wasn't just testing numbers, They were experimenting with combinations, weaving air, surface, and underwater threats into a single layered assault. Inside the operations center, the weight of the situation pressed down. The destroyer was still holding, but the margin was evaporating. Damage control teams prepared for possible flooding scenarios, sealing compartments, and readying pumps. For the first time, the thought crept in. A breakthrough was not only possible, it was likely. The captain tightened his grip on the console. "They've changed the game," he said grimly. What had started as a battle against swarming speedboats was evolving into something far more dangerous. A playbook for future wars, unfolding in real time. The sea erupted as submerged drones made their move. Sonar operators shouted warnings while combat systems struggled to track fast-rising contacts. Torpedo alarms wailed, though these were crude but deadly underwater kamikazes, aiming to cripple the destroyer's hull. The captain ordered countermeasures. Decoys splashed into the water, creating false signatures to lure drones off course. Depth charges rolled from the stern, exploding in thunderous plumes that rocked the ship. Some drones were shredded instantly. Others pressed on, their motors buzzing toward the destroyer's underside. On the surface, the swarm pushed in. ESSM and ram stocks were nearly gone, leaving the phalanx CIWS as the last shield. Its guns roared, tracers stitching the night, bursts cutting down drones' meters from impact. Sailors on deck covered their ears against the deafening storm. A sudden jolt rocked the ship. One drone exploded close enough to shear off an antenna mast. Sparks showered the deck, comms scrambled. Damage control teams rushed to stabilize power and extinguish fires. Below deck, engineers rerouted power through scorched conduits, nursing battered circuits back to life. The destroyer kept fighting, refusing to yield. Above, the Seahawk returned, unleashing hellfires on disguised fishing vessels that had launched wave after wave. Explosions tore through several silencing platforms, fueling the assault. The Pate Amperes confirmed losses, multiple launch points destroyed, Chinese crews abandoning wrecks. But even as platforms burned, the sheer number of drones already at sea meant the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. The destroyer's defenses were battered but intact, its crew exhausted but unbroken. Against overwhelming odds, every system and every sailor stood locked in a desperate stand. This was the climax. America's finest technology and training colliding with China's relentless swarm. The question was no longer about weapons alone. It was about willpower, endurance, and the future of naval warfare itself. And now it's your call. Who do you think has the upper hand in this climax? If you're backing the US Navy to hold, press 1 inch the comments. If you think China's swarm can still break through, press 9 and hit subscribe so you don't miss the aftermath. When the last fragments slipped beneath the waves, silence returned to the East China Sea. Smoke drifted over the swells, dotted with burning wrecks of disguised fishing boats. The U.S. destroyer rode the chop, scorched yet afloat, antennas bent, sensors damaged, crew exhausted but steady. Reports fixed the scale. 160-200 sea drones launched, with an 85-95% kill rate. The ship logged minor damage to masts and arrays. A few scars on the superstructure, but propulsion intact. It had endured one of the fiercest swarm assaults ever attempted. Chinese losses were heavy. Several launch platforms, fishing craft turned covert magazines were sunk or burning. Survivors were pulled from the sea, others missing. The cost ran into tens of millions, but the true aim was not destruction, it was measurement. Collecting data on U.S. responses under saturation. For the sailors, relief mixed with unease. Ammunition stocks were low. Each ESSM or RAM cost hundreds of thousands, while the enemy sacrificed drones worth far less. The imbalance was clear. Fleets can win, yet still bleed their magazines dry. Still, doctrine held. Layered defenses, radar, jamming, missiles, guns, helicopter, and patrol aircraft functioned as designed. Damage control was swift, and strikes on disguised launchers blunted the assault before it could regenerate. Training and discipline, not luck, kept the ship in the fight. Analysts called the clash a glimpse of the future. Warships under constant pressure from cheap expendables. Battles defined as much by numbers and logistics as firepower. Tonight, the edge belonged to the U.S. crew. Tomorrow, the equation may shift. As dawn rose, sailors scanned the horizon for signs of another wave. The message was unmistakable. The seas around the Secaucus were more contested than ever. So what's your verdict, hard-won victory, or just the opening act of something larger? If you stand with the U.S. Navy, press 1 inch the comments. If you believe China's swarm strategy will prevail, press 9. And subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.